From 4 of our principals. I'm Jessica Bino. I'm Pencil's Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to this kickoff for our Principal for a Day week in 2021, where we have about 25 virtual Principal for a Day visits happening this week. And to expand the opportunity and the learning, we wanted to make this panel available to more than just those that are doing visits or hosting visits this year with us in the virtual environment. So we're going to jump right in and introduce our 4 principal panelists. As we do, I think most folks that are on the call have joined us before for some kind of session and know that there's opportunities for you to interact in the chat as well as ask questions towards the end. We'll let everybody know when that time is, but if there's ever any questions you wanted to pop in the chat, please feel free to do that and we'll incorporate it into the conversation as we go. So as I said, we have 4 wonderful principals with us, and I'm going to have each of them just jump right in and introduce themselves and their school, starting with Karen Pulcinetti.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I am the principal of the Manhattan Business Academy, which is a small to medium-sized school. We have about 420 kids, 406, 420, it fluctuates. And I'm the founding principal. It's been 12 years, 20 years in the DOE, and I've been working with Pencil for many years, so I'm super excited to be here.
Great, thanks so much, Karen. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Asia Johnson to introduce herself and her school.
Hi, I'm Dr. Asia Johnson. I'm the principal of Longwood Preparatory Academy in the South Bronx. We have about a little bit more students this year. We have about 340 scholars this year, and I'm really excited about being here with you today.
Great, thanks so much. Next, we have Uche and Joku.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Uche Joku. I'm the principal of John G. School for Law in Park Slope, Brooklyn. We are actually shy of 500 students now, and it is a pleasure to be here.
Great, thanks so much, Uche. And finally, Moses Ojeda.
Hello, everyone. Moses Ojeda, principal of Thomas Edison Career and Technical Education High School. We're at 2,300 students actually now, and we offer 13 CT programs, and I'm a graduate of the school. So I'm back there leading and fortunate to lead such a great place. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Moses. And now to introduce our moderator, I'd like to turn it over to Greg Bethile, the president of Pencil. Greg?
Thank you, Jessica. I am really excited that Asia and Karen and Moses and Uche can be with us today representing the over 1,800 New York City principals that have been working all year to help keep kids connected to school. Pencil's been doing Principal for a Day for the last 25 years. And this is a Principal for a Day like none other we've had, like so many other milestones all of us have experienced over the last year. As more folks are getting vaccinated, as city workers begin to go back to the office, this year's Principal for a Day conversation was that much more important as we think about what the business and civic community can begin to do to help New York City recover, and importantly, help the New York City schools get back on their feet. And with that theme in mind, we could think of no better moderator for today's panel than Dennis Walcott, currently the president and CEO of the Queens Public Library, and a former colleague of mine when he was the chancellor of the New York City Public Schools and the deputy mayor, helping us recover from 9/11 all the way back in 2001 and 2002, and Superstorm Sandy in 2010. Dennis, we're really happy you can be with us today, and I know you'll host a great conversation with our principals. So let me turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Pencil. It is a pleasure to be a part of this, but before I go on, I want to thank Pencil for all of your outstanding work over the years and what you've been able to do in adapting the Pencil model to the challenge of the pandemic. So much respect to Pencil, but when we talk about respect, I have to give respect to our leaders who are here today and all those who may not be a part of this discussion, but who are out in our schools serving day in, day out for all of their hard work. You guys are amazing. I just think the world of our leaders in the schools, our teachers and our parents, and especially our students, as they navigated a very difficult year. And as we draw to a close and spring is gradually springing out there, I really want to throw the question out to the folks who are here right now. Tell us about your school year, and I think some of the things that really are on your mind as you begin to prepare for the next school year, and even before the next school year, as you begin to prepare possibly for the summer. So I will throw it open, no particular order. Whoever wants to jump in, feel free to jump in. So this is not a quiet group. So why don't you take it, Asia?
So I think with our school, one of the things that we're starting to already look forward to is we're already starting to plan for next year. So with that, we've already started with the summer, and then how do we transition our scholars from the summer all the way over to what's going to happen in the fall. So for example, we know that some of our scholars will have some social emotional needs. So we're preparing for how that's going to be embedded during the school day. Additionally, we know that we'll need some additional academic support for our scholars as well. So we've already started the planning on what our small group sessions will look like, trying to put in opportunities for extended day. Many years ago, we had an extended day where our school day was from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's a very long school day. Definitely not for everyone, but it did allow for some additional courses to be offered, support courses, some engagement activities that scholars had not received in the past. And so we're definitely looking forward to learning from some data, knowing a lot more about our families that we didn't have. We certainly know that virtual meetings, especially for our parents, are here to stay. We've learned that we've increased as a high school, a large number of families have engaged in virtual events, which we were stunned. So we're just like, that is definitely something that we're going to continue to do, is offer virtual programming to our families.
Hey, before we move on to the other principles, you mentioned the social, emotional, the mental health challenges. How are you going about thinking about that? And also, how have you addressed it so far this past academic year?
So one of the things that we did when we went on the first remote learning, when we all went into quarantine, is we formed a wellness team at our school. And that literally, when I say it was all hands on deck, it was school secretaries, it was support staff, it was the counselors, it was the at-risk counselors that formed this wellness team, my assistant principals as well. And what we did was we made daily outreach calls to kids that just to check in, some to, make sure they're ready and prepared. We knew which scholars were struggling with technology and needed us to sort of walk through that with them virtually. And then others that just we couldn't get in contact with. And so we would call them, see how they were doing. We attempted to do a lot of virtual programming as well. We've done a lot of virtual programming, actually, that we noticed that a lot of kids some kids, unfortunately, who had responsibilities during the day, many of our kids ended up having to take jobs. So coming back to school was also very challenging for them as well. So trying to get them acclimated to a 5-day-a-week program, we already know that's going to be a struggle. We're seeing it now when we're trying to get some kids in 5 days a week because of other responsibilities. I hope that answers the question. Oh, I think you're on mute.
I don't remember hitting the mute button, but that's par for the course. Uche, if you can tell us about your school year and your plans upcoming.
Oh, definitely. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. In preparation for this new school year, I think one of the biggest things for me and my community is the fact that I think all of us here are going to be dealing with the same issue. And this is something that I've brought up before, is the fact that next fall, I would only have one class of students that have had at least a full year as being members of our school community. We'll have freshmen next year who will be brand new to our high school. We'll have sophomores that the vast majority never spent any time on campus. Then we'll have the same thing with our juniors who only spent half a year. Then we'll have our seniors who are the only ones, the last of the Mohicans, who actually can say we remember a time when we were all on campus for more than just a few months. And that sense of community is something that is really pressing on us as a school community. Having been a dean for a number of years before I became a AP, then a principal, and dealing with behavior and establishing culture. And that's something that we're really trying to figure out. And not only our students, but also our teachers. We have a lot of teachers who also have now been out of practice of being in front of kids. And the question has been, how do we now reestablish that space again, create a space for our kids to really, and our teachers and families to understand how to be together again. So we've started that now. You know, we're, last week we decided to take our Mondays and create a space on Mondays for our kids to really engage in advisory that's really dictated by them. So whether it's a space for them to just talk to teachers and get to know their teachers even better, or even create spaces where student peer groups can really engage each other. We're partnering with Brain Power Wellness to bring in, we've been partners with them for a couple of years now, but to really help us really get good at creating mindfulness spaces for our kids and those mindfulness practices. Like community is something that's very, very important. I think a lot of us here, we do the ABCs of 1, 2, 3s very well. We know how to teach, we know what learning looks like, but that's just a community, because now we have children who've literally been out of, communion with each other for such a long time. How do we create a space for them to come back again? And that's been our main focus. And even for summer school, we're creating spaces for that to happen as well. That's organic, and we're getting input from our students as well to really figure out, like, how do we really reestablish culture as the foundation of next school year.
So you mentioned community a number of times, which I totally understand and agree with, as far as having that community as part of the school environment. But now I would imagine it's going to even be more of a challenge, in addition to the students, when you recruit new teachers into the school and balancing that with the existing teachers who may have not been in the school building for a long period of time. So how do you make sure you focus on what the community of the school is like, and also incorporate that into your recruitment process?
That's a great question. Something that we started prior to the pandemic, but now it's become the foundation of building that teacher culture, is having teachers be part of, front and center, part of the hiring process. Because I've told teachers before the pandemic, how important it is for them to have a voice in the hiring process, because they're hiring their own teammates. And we're using that as a great place to really get teachers talking to each other about what does it mean to be a teacher at John Jay School for Law? What are the things that have been established that's kept teachers, staying year after year? On average, every year we lose maybe one teacher who decides to move on because they've moved into somewhere else. Our teachers actually stay. So the question now for them is, in hiring new teachers, we have to be very particular, because we need a certain kind of person, certain kind of human being who's going to come in and be part of the culture, because at the end of the day, we're servicing children and their families. So we just have to make sure we have the right people. And teachers having a voice in that process is very important for us.
So Karen, I want to take the question a little bit different as far as you prioritizing during the school year. Now, you had so many issues, all of you, in the entire school community, as far as this thing happening, that thing happening, and how you address the issues that came up. How did you prioritize the major challenges you faced, and what type of solutions did you put in place to address those high priority areas?
Yeah, there was a lot, right? And I think that when you talk about like how was school this year, it was choppy. And I think that was something that was really hard. But when we prioritize, everything has to center around the students. So when we talk about the social emotional part of it, that was a big part of what we did this whole year, and last year too, because, when we're in school and the kids are in school, we can see them and we talk to them, and we talk to them in the hallway. They come into offices and we have real conversations with them. It's so hard to do virtually. It's so hard to figure out what's going on with kids. So the priority is to figure out what's going on with kids and to use every resource, like Asia said, like every single resource that you have has to reach out to students, because there are things going on behind the scenes that we don't even know that's happening, like parents losing jobs, kids losing family members, kids losing homes, right? Like we have to know what's going on in the kids' lives. And, you know, sometimes it's for teenagers, it's really hard for them to open up sometimes. And and even if you're in person, so now if you're on Zoom, it's even harder. So like Uche was saying, is we also have an advisory program, and we kept that for the whole time. We didn't do it every single day, but we did it 2 days a week, where the kids are meeting with their advisors and doing restorative justice circles and talking about all the things that came up. We had RJ circles about equity, about George Floyd, about the pandemic, about the vaccine, right? Like all these things to hear student voices so that we know what their perspectives are. Looking forward, we're going to do a lot of that social emotional work, but today I had a conversation with my APs about, you know, like that academic gap. You know, what does that mean? And do we have a waiver for the regents? And if we don't, what does that mean? You know, like there's a lot of like things that you have to think about when you're going into next year. And since we don't really know our 9th graders, you know, do they take a second year of algebra? Like it's those kind of decisions that you really have to talk through with the whole team, like your leadership team, and also the teachers and students. You know, student voice is also super important about what they're thinking. So I hope that answered the question.
Without question, and I think before I get to Moses, I think you also talked about the information flow and relying on the information flow to help you work with that student and building in the restorative part of the discussions and everything else that makes a student whole. But during the pandemic, I would assume that the information flow was somewhat stunted, quite frankly, because like you said, people may be homeless who were not homeless before. Situations of relatives who are dying and the traumatic effect of a relative dying and not having the ability to come to school to share it and to read the body language of that student. How do you fill the gap of that information flow to really give you a fuller sense of your student? Because that's what drives a good school, is having the full knowledge of the student, so your teachers are informed, you as leaders are informed. Where do you fill that gap?
We tried many different things. We did like more fun activities to like bond. Like Uche was saying too, is like, we really only know our seniors and our juniors like well. And then we kind of know our sophomores because they were there for 5-6 months. And then we really don't know our freshmen and they don't know us. So we've tried, the freshman team got together, they tried a lot of things like field days and competitions and having more like small group circles, talking to kids one-on-one, having our guidance counselors do those kind of things. But it has been really difficult to build those bonds with the freshmen yet. We're thinking of in the summer, we've already put in permits for fields. We have we're in Chelsea, so our streets that line us are 18th and 19th Street between 8th and 9th. And we have that street shut down so that we can bring people in, and especially our freshmen and our seniors, because, you know, I mean, all the kids, but like you feel bad for the seniors too, because they've really had a really weird senior year where they haven't been able to see each other. But like just getting to know the freshmen and the sophomores, you know, outside in events so that we can have real conversations with them face to face, and we can see that body language, right? Like we can see how they're doing. So yeah, I mean, that's how we're trying things.
It's the tough challenge. And so Moses, Thomas Edison, I know it well. I know a number of your schools well, but Thomas Edison is right up the hill from where I'm sitting right now in Queens. So tell us about your year, your unique challenges, and some of your plans moving forward.
So I'm going to say that many of what my colleagues have stated are our current issues as well, and we're addressing them. I think the key thing I'll say is communication was key for us, especially where we were located. We had a lot of trauma taking place, a lot of family members fielding the COVID and family members passing away. We had one student who lost a parent 1 week apart, then lost a second parent. So communication was key. Guidance team activated to reach out to those students, activating a remote learning committee with students, teachers, and administration to field the concerns, and also myself holding space where I can hear the concerns from families and students, and just constantly holding sessions like this where they would bring information to the table, and then I would be able to release that via a newsletter and put the concerns out there. Like my colleagues, we created space on Mondays, Mindful Mondays. We're conscious of the fact that people need to grieve and also deal with anxiety and stress, and teaching people that the only constant is change. So you asked me about next year, and I can tell you that the way we're planning is to have short-term planning, because we never know what can change based on the fact that there's missing information, right? So short-term planning, especially for a big school of 116 faculty members, teachers rather, and 2,300 students, right? That's a big shift to try to navigate. So taking small gains and then making changes and tweaking and constantly talking to students. We've increased their voice at the table to the point where they've co-created lessons and unit plans with our teachers. I mean, that is something that, again, I think we've all felt some gains or seen some gains. And that's one of the ones that I'm proud of, is the fact that they've really stepped up to let us know and work with teachers to say to them, this is how I learn best in this remote environment. And can we do things differently? And having that conversation has been key for everyone at Edison.
So I want to get a little selfish for a second as far as you guys are concerned, because we rightfully so paid a lot of attention to the students and the challenges for this year, the planning for next year. But you as the leaders, you have the same type of issues. Some of you have gone through probably your own personal struggles, or relatives who have gone their struggles, as much less leading a school environment. How have you dealt with this, and what type of supports do you have in place, both for all of you, but also for your teachers as well, because your teachers have gone through this in the back and forth and what's happening. And then, you know, we're a very political city, and the politics and how that played itself out as well. So if you could just guide us through, I think, how you maintain your emotional stability and balance, but also incorporate that into your workforce as well. Asia?
I think for us, I mean, just staying grounded is the same thing. Like we've, you know, I personally meditate. So that is something that we've done at our professional developments with our teachers as well, is that we just take a moment to breathe and just appreciate breath and the ability to be able to breathe, and something that's personal to me, and just getting people to just be quiet for a second and allow their mind to rest. That has sort of been really helpful for us. We've also noticed that with our faculty as well, some of these things are things that aren't really new to us. It's just we learned a lot more in this process. Like we've already had a mindfulness movement class way before the pandemic. And so those were things that we were already instilling in our scholars to really start to think about how they can just be still for a moment and relax. So for our faculty, we provide the same thing. I mentioned at professional development, we give them that opportunity to just be quiet. We did a lot more, many interactive activities as well with them, because a lot of them lost family members as well. So we had a lot of scholars who lost family members, and some that was their only parent, and now they had to go move in with other people. So our scholars needed, we had family faculty and staff who also lost family members, and it was hard to teach virtually through that as well. And, you know, just missing the connective tissue. Our school was already a really supportive school and a strong community. So I think what we've missed the most is what we call the side hugs, the things that you can't do, and it's just hard to replace with an elbow bump. But, you know, those are the things that we've tried to do in a very short time.
Jay?
I mean, I'll piggyback on that. Oh, Uche,
sure.
I'm sorry. You said Uche.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
No,
Uche.
jump in. No, I don't have a problem. Jump in.
No, please, go ahead, please. I'll go after you.
Okay. Sorry about that. So, I mean, I think for the way that I'm a very social person, and I think a lot of teachers are really social people, so it's hard not to see each other. But at the same time, the work changed, right? Like when you think about teachers teaching at home, like a lot of people are like around the world, they're like, oh my gosh, they're teaching at home, they must have a lot of time or whatever. But teaching at home is hard, right? Like it's really, really hard. And I think for us, it's been really being gentle with each other, right? And being kind, because, you know, there's so many things that can pop up and so many things that can go wrong and so many obstacles. And like, if we heard the word pivot one more time, it was gonna drive us crazy, because everything especially at the beginning and even through the summer, it was like, be prepared to pivot, be prepared to pivot. And it's like, we're asking teachers to do heroic things, right? And I think that since we've been in it for so long, is that people are forgetting that we're asking teachers to do heroic things, and that, you know, it's hard to look at a screen with only letters on it and you know, or cameras up at the ceiling and teach, because so much of teaching is nonverbal, and it's interactive, and it's really, really hard. So I think part of it is just being kind and being gentle with one another and understanding and empathizing, and then also just giving the okay to have like a venting day to me or to one of our APs, and just giving that time, and also not inundating them with meetings, because, you know, it's hard to teach and be on Zoom the whole day, and then you're like, oh man, I have a meeting with a professional development meeting, or I have this or I have that. So we've been really trying to be very aware of teachers' needs, and just trying, you know, really hard to remind them that hopefully this will pass, right? And that we'll be back in school next year, and that we can go back and, you know, build that community again. But it's been hard.
No, I hear you. I understand. And I mean, you said something that really was helpful for me on the other side of life, in that I have some of my grandchildren that live with my wife and myself, and just our view of the remote classes and how we see it from a grandparent perspective as well. And I think it's important for the parents, the adults in the lives of the children, to have that clear understanding of those challenges that you guys just laid out. So I think that balancing act is so important, because people don't have a sense of the unique challenges and the lack of social interaction. I mean, as you know better than I do, that, you know, a good teacher picks up on the vibe of what's happening in his or her room. They know what's happening with that individual child based on that human interaction. And by not having that ability, they potentially lose so much in that regard. Uche?
There's this word that has been the mantra for me for the past year, and that word is grace. Having grace for myself, for others, helping to plant those seeds of grace and harvest them within my community, so people just have grace for each other. Early on, there was a lot of passive aggressive behavior happening, you know, which makes sense for people who are being quarantined and are going through cabin fever. You know, I don't know about anyone else. When as a teaching fellow and learning how to teach and how to run my classroom, there was no lesson on how to do it online. There was no lesson on how to do it during a pandemic. There was no lesson on how to balance, you know, my wife and our newborn, who was born on March 4th, and March 15th, we were told school was closing. You know, there was so much change happening for me personally. But then, you know, being a principal, I mean, I'm pretty sure my colleagues here would agree that we're expected to be superheroes, to be a little bit more than. We can't show pain, we can't show suffering, we can't show any of that. We have to be stoic through all that we do. And I learned that the first thing I had to do was to take the cape off, take pull the mask off and just be human. And asking my teachers, how are you doing? Like, listen, it's just me and you right now. What's going on? Tell me about, grandma or your wife or your son. Same thing with my students. This year I made a conscious decision to teach a class every semester. Not because I have all the free time in the world, but I felt like I needed to be in the trenches with my teachers. I need to understand what was it like for them to be teaching remotely. And maybe something I picked up from when I was in the Marine Corps. You have to be willing to do what you're asking other people to do. And in that space, I learned that my students needed a lot of grace as well. A lot of them were suffering, and it might not necessarily be the loss of a loved one. It was the fear. I think that was the biggest thing, that fear of the unknown. Like, am I going to be okay? Is my grandma going to be okay? Are my friends going to be okay? But then the same thing will happen with teachers, and just being in that space, I had to make a conscious decision, talk to my APs and say, listen, moving forward, we have to create space for people to have voice. We might not like what's going to come out of their mouths, but we had to create that space. And we would have town halls where students would go off, like kids would just lose it. And it was okay. It was one of those things where I had to be virtually pat them on the back and say, listen, just let it out, let it out. And then you hear other kids saying, I feel the same way. Then teachers saying, I feel the same way too. And that was something that's very important, especially with establishing this new culture in this space of the pandemic, and that was something that just had to be. But I would say this one thing though, I was very lucky, and my brother Moses I'm pretty sure would agree with me on this. We have a bond here because of a program a fellowship that we're part of, called the Grace Fellows, which is a fellowship of principals, 18 of us, that is really built around transformational leadership based on mindfulness practices. So literally, we spent the summer of 2019, trying to understand what it meant to be a mindful leader, and kind of like ripping the Band-Aids off of our personal issues and growing in that space. And it was almost like it was a godsend, because who knew that there would be a pandemic? And I found myself moving in my school very differently. And I'm very thankful for having that experience, but I also find myself supporting other principals and saying, hey, stop and breathe. How are you doing? And grace has just been that thing that's gotten me through. And it's tough. It's tough. There've been moments where I've had to just break down in tears with my wife and say, listen, I don't know if I can do this. But then she reminds me, Uche, you know what you always say to me? Grace. Have grace for yourself as well. So that's been the journey thus far. And this has been incredible.
Thank you, Uche. I mean, I guess part of the question. And Moses, let me throw it to you, because you also, I would imagine, had those challenges, whether personally or with the staff and your adults. Tell us how you handled it at Thomas.
So I'll say Uche is right. It was great that we had just come out of that fellowship, because it gave us the tools that we needed to handle this pandemic. And so self-care is only when you can start caring for others, but also change happens from within. You got to change yourself to give change to others. So I could not be in a light where I was negative or getting on the complaining wagon, and because you give off that energy. So one thing we learned. And so because of that, I had to make sure that I was there to lead, but also to be there to counsel. So calling those teachers that I know for a fact are planners and need to know a year before they were struggling, and had taken the time to actually call them and say, hey, I'm just checking in on you because I know how you plan and how are you? And that went such a long way. And just fielding those concerns from my assistant principal to say, do I need to reach out to anyone? Please make sure you check in on your teachers daily, just to check in, a quick text. And just about, again, supporting them and knowing that we were in the same struggle together. And also to lead by example and side by side at times, like actually walking into classrooms and saying, you need a break, why don't you go, I'll take over. And so they saw that. And I think that really helped with them knowing that, okay, we have the support we need. And then it started to cultivate the innovation, right? To say, I can take a risk because Moses is going to allow us to take a risk in this environment and allow us to try new things that we want to try. And we got to let go of the old ways right now. And so that helped in that process. But for me, I also wanted to quit. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to walk away. I have 28 years of service. I started young. And there was some trying times because I was like, I can't continue to plan, and then things shift. I get information and then you're throwing that away, sleepless nights. And then I had to come to my senses and say, if you don't do this and step up, who else will, right? You don't know. So I know you're big on running. So I started jogging more, to meditation, starting up for yoga. Those things are keeping me sane and able to continue to serve with grace, and be more human when it comes to knowing the needs of individuals. And that really is where we are right now at Edison. And I'm proud of my team. Like I say to everyone, a great principal has a great team behind them. I cannot do this alone. So I always shout out my team, from the teachers to the guidance counselors to the assistant principals. If it wasn't us coming together as a community to serve the way we did, I don't know if we'd be in the place we are.
So, a couple of things. One, again, I want to thank all of you because this has been extremely enlightening, and we'll be taking questions in around 5 minutes or so. But you talk about a team, I imagine the team also includes external partners as well. So why don't you tell us what you look for with an external partner and what ideally you want moving forward from an external partner?
I can jump on that real quick. So it's it's funny because with the pandemic and everything else that's been happening with the pandemic, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement, we've had George Floyd, we've had all these things happening. And I'll be honest with you, one of the things that really bothered me was that all of a sudden you had these spaces where people all of a sudden were saying, oh my God, we didn't know that there were all these issues happening. So now we're making these statements. And for me, and I'm talking about corporations, different community entities making these statements. But my question was always like, but who's actually listening? Who's actually saying, okay, this is what we're actually going to do, and we're going to engage the communities. And I'll tell you this, till the end of my career, even beyond, Pencil is always going to be on top of my list, because one of the things that I appreciated about Pencil as a partner was bringing voices in to corporate partners and saying, this is what's happening. And people actually genuinely saying, wow, how can we help? And I can tell you one of the Pencil's corporate partners, Deloitte, you know, who happens to be also a partner with our school, with John Jay School for Law, you know, asked me like, okay, what can we do? How can we support? And I said, listen, I need help. You guys are consultancy. You guys are consultants. Help us figure out how to better serve our students. And I said it from a place of just frustration and just with everything going on. And the next year, you know, we were given over $100,000 pro bono free time with consultants who came and helped us and talked to our students and gathered data and said, here's a report and what you can do for your school community. And we implemented it like that. And that space that was created by Pencil and Deloitte tells me, moving forward, if you're going to be a partner to public schools, it can't just be lip service. What are you bringing to the table? Because the reality is we're preparing the next generation of children who will become the adults who hopefully you'll be hiring. And we need your support in that space. And that's been a big thing for me. That lip service, a lot of entities have, I don't have time for that anymore. You know, and I'm pretty sure a lot of my colleagues will probably feel the same way, because now, you know, I mean, the world has changed, and our sense of normalcy hopefully will come back. There'll be a different normal, and we need partners who are actually going to be part of the long-term solution, not just what feels good right now.
Would anyone else like to talk about the external partnership?
I certainly would. I know that we've had the same partner. We've had Empire for about 3 years now. And we also started a new partnership with Greystar, and they have just been absolutely amazing to our scholars and to our school community. They continue to engage our scholars immediately, virtually. It wasn't, you know, like a switch that went off. It was like, okay, we're no longer going to have kids physically come to the building or come to our offices. So let's just set up a virtual event for them. And they collaborated with my assistant principal, continue to support my kids with all of their career readiness workshops and things of that nature. My kids are have internships. I believe a few scholars are even getting, will have a pay job this summer, one of my seniors, for participating in the program as well. Even in my last workshop that we did, our principal for the day, when we just did a webinar last year, one gentleman, can't remember the name of the company, but they sort of heard our cries and, you know, some of the challenges that we had, and was like, what is it that you guys need? And I was like, one of our biggest challenges is that our kids don't have calculators, because we thought we were going to go back into the building, and they can't do math. You know, they can't do math on a calculator, not the graphing. And he's like, I'm going to send you calculators right now. And then within a week, we were distributing calculators to scholars. And it was just, that is what we need in a partnership. Not someone who's just like, yeah, tell me what it is that you need, but then those things actually don't come through. When you, specifically for the Bronx, and for, just so that people understand, and I'm the only one representing the Bronx here, we're all from different boroughs here, but the Bronx is the poorest congressional district in the nation, right? So our needs are very much different from probably other boroughs for sure, but definitely any other place in the nation. And so when we say that we have needs, we have real needs. We're dealing with all types of different levels of poverty. And we have kids who, when I say I have kids who can't come to school, not because they don't want to physically be in the building, but because they can't, because it's going to now affect their work schedule, because their parents lost a job, and they are now the breadwinners. And so what we need from a partner is to say, how can I invest in this kid and then invest in this community? Not to just say, like, here's a blank check, but how can I ensure that you put in an academic program that is rigorous and sustainable, that's going to also allow this a child to be able to work as an internship in a field that they might be passionate or interested in. And so that's what we really need from our partners, aside from what Uchi said as well, of someone being able to consult us and say, this, you're also running a business virtually as well. Talk to me about some things that you're doing that's working really well, so I can think about how I can implement those into my practice as a school leader as well. And I think those are the things that we want from a partner, not just someone who likes to hear us, but literally people who said, I want to roll up my sleeves and really get involved and invest in a school community who really needs it.
So let me take this opportunity to thank all of you. The panel session will continue. I have a session that I'm going to be moderating for the Queens Public Library around the unfortunate attacks against the Asian American community with our DA and Congresswoman in the Commission on Human Rights in a couple of minutes. So I would need to leave this one, but I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. But thank you all for your leadership, your commitment, your compassion, and everything that you do to really make our schools great and the challenges that we'll be facing in the future. And Pencil, thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do to make our school system a better place. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Dennis, and thanks for your excellent moderation of the first part of the panel. I'm going to let any of the other principals who wanted to maybe jump on that last question about external partnerships, Moses or Karen, if you had any thoughts on that topic, and then we can turn to questions from the chat.
Sure. Karen, you want to go first, or?
It doesn't matter. I saw you unmute, so I was like, oh, he's unmuting.
I'll make it quick. For me, being a career and tech education school is all about those partners who quickly innovated and said, we can still service the needs of your students, right? And so I was so happy to hear that Pencil was moving towards the competition and saying, we're going to host the competition like we do every year in a virtual environment. And I was so happy to hear that, because it kept our students motivated, right? Some competitions did not go on this year, and they were crushed, because just like an athlete who prepares to perform, they were preparing to perform at a CTE level, and that was taken from them, right? So kudos to Pencil for stepping up and doing that. And also for those partners that said, you know, we're going to work with you moving forward, because I'm pretty sure in discussions with them that there'll be new skill sets that our students are going to need as we move forward, right? Just like we're going to be keeping some of the things we learned and getting rid of some of the old stuff, I'm pretty sure partners out there are going to do the same. And so I'm going to want to know that so I can better prepare the students for the field. Karen?
Thanks, Moses. And Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add, you know, when I think about the students that all of us serve, right? A lot of us are, most of our kids are the first in their family to go to college. And a lot of our kids, they don't really leave their boroughs, right? Like they don't leave New York City and they don't leave their boroughs. So I think in a partner, I've always found the best thing with Pencil, especially when we're in person, is that opportunity for kids to see different places that they could imagine themselves at. I think, you know, even virtually, when you look at what someone else is doing, you know, like we had Deloitte at one point, we partnered with Maslansky, and they go in, and when they go in person into a business, it's like a whole new world has opened up to them. Their jaws drop. Like there's so much there that they had never imagined before. And those opportunities for our students are priceless, you know, because we're just a bunch of educators, right? And I say that because that's mostly who our kids interact with, is their family and educators. And not every kid wants to be an educator. So finding out about marketing, like what does that mean? Like we're going to be in marketing, I don't even know what that is, or advertising, or consulting, right? Like what does a consultant do? I have no idea. I've been in education my whole life, so it's nice. It's so amazing to have the partners where they bring the business to the school, or they bring the kids to the business, either virtually or in person. And I find that really opens a lot of doors. And then you get all these internships out of it too, because our kids are amazing, and they're hungry and they're sponges. And, you know, you have people at the businesses meeting our students, and they immediately want to give them an internship because they're just such great kids. So I love those doors that open because of Pencil.
Thanks, Karen. And as Uche said before, these are the future employees of the company. So getting to know them now, and then getting them to be interns and working with them is a great starting point. We're going to turn to some questions from the audience. We do have a question from Angela in the chat. So it's a question about what would you appreciate, or what have you appreciated from parent groups at your school that have helped you navigate this time? I don't know if anybody in particular wants to jump on how a parent group has supported you in this time.
One of the benefits that, I mean, it's weird to say benefit, but one of the realized benefits of the pandemic is the fact that because we've been virtual, PTA attendance, school leadership team attendance has like literally tripled, in some cases quadrupled, because now parents can just log on from their phones or from work, wherever they're at. Prior to that, it's funny because I could never say that parental involvement was low. Is that we have parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs, like their lives are so complicated, and also navigating through New York City, the train, parking, and everything else just never worked out. But the fact that parents can log on to our town halls, to our those meetings, and then I always recognize them. We always recognize parents are here, and if you're here, you have equal voice in our conversations, in our programs, and it's been incredible because we've had parents just ask simple questions like, you know, it could be something as simple as, you know, amount of homework students are receiving in math, you know, and parents saying like, I'm trying to help, but it's hard because I don't know how to help in this space. And then because the student themselves are not saying that there's a struggle. Like those little conversations like that has been very helpful to us, and because it's allowed us to actually engage parents even more. And I really believe that the benefit of this is going to be long-term relationship with parents. It's going to be very different. I've told my staff, post-pandemic, we are running our meetings virtually moving forward, because it's one thing to have a PTA meeting and have like 5 parents show up and then do it virtually, and you have 30, 40 parents show up. You know, it's a no-brainer. But I think just create a space for them to come in and also allow them to feel comfortable enough to speak. You know, you're a member of this community. And I think that's something that's been very powerful and has really helped us move forward.
And Uche, I kind of want to build off of that with just the 5 minutes or so that we have left. We've talked a lot about the challenges that that were part of this past year and past 15 months, and no doubt there have been challenges. I think we all can agree on that. But you just touched on something of saying you're going to keep virtual meetings because parent attendance is up for your PTA. Are there other bright spots, silver linings to this moment that you think can or you'd like to see continue to enhance your practice as educators and principals of your school? I see Moses shaking his head right away. So go ahead, Moses. What's your silver lining?
It's professional learning. I don't think I would have been able to get 80% of my teachers certified in project-based learning had it not been for the virtual environment where I was able to have them attend and actually do asynchronous or cover their classes. It really gave us a lot of flexibility. So professional learning was key for us, and I'd like to keep that. And to piggyback off of Uche, I think that those meetings are key. You know, I held principal parent chats 3 times a month, and it really helped to bring in that voice. But then translating that to a newsletter, like I said before, putting it somewhere, it just really spread throughout the community, because some people are afraid to ask questions in forums, but they're going to benefit from the responses and just capturing that. So yeah, if anything, I would say I would also look forward to keeping PTA SLT meetings virtual.
Great. Asia, Karen, any other silver linings that you hope continue post-pandemic and post this situation? Asia, go ahead.
For me, would definitely be the virtual events as well. We did a huge for Black Lives Matter week, which was the first time we had that event this week. I mean, this year, every event was completely virtual, and the level of participation and the engagement that we had, the discussions that kids were having. When George Floyd first was murdered last year, we had just a town hall meeting together with all of the staff and faculty. It was only supposed to be an hour. It was almost 3 hours. And I was like, you guys have to be tired now. You know, the kids just wouldn't stop talking. The teachers wouldn't stop engaging. And these rich and deep conversations about things that we wouldn't normally talk about. And so something also with the virtual spaces, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree too, with the breakout rooms, especially for PD, where teachers that would normally not speak up, when you put them in a small group with other people and it's virtually, and they don't have to turn on their camera so they don't feel like someone is actually staring at them. That has been one of the biggest increases that we've seen in engagement. Of course, I think I mentioned earlier about our parents as well. We're doing like virtual cooking classes with some virtual fitness classes. We've done so many activities with our families that we feel more personable, because we feel like we're now in their homes and they feel like they're in ours, because we're all at home and we're learning together, we're sharing. I'll put my kids and say like, oh, hey, this is my son, you know. So they feel more connected to us, and we certainly feel more connected to them. Definitely something we're going to continue to do. Virtual meetings now and forever. But we do welcome the in-person stuff too.
That's great. And Karen, did you want to chime in on this?
I mean, I totally agree with what everyone said, especially like the parent involvement, the virtual meetings. I would also add that, you know, every student learns differently. And I think that, you know, you can't replace an in-person teaching with anything, because teachers are like magical when it comes to in-person teaching and that. But, you know, I also think that the kids that have fallen behind in credits, we've done a lot of credit recovery virtually. And for some of our kids, they have engaged more in that because they're able to do it, you know, like our kids are working or taking care of kids during the school day. And then all of a sudden at midnight, you know, you're getting all this stuff that kids are doing, and it's coming in because that's the time that they had to do it. And it's nice, again, like Asia's saying, like, oh, here, look, it's my dog, you know, like they feel that connection, and you have these teachers that are able to connect with kids even virtually. And I think, you know, having that flexibility with kids that need the flexibility, like I'm not going to do away with that either.
Yeah, and I remember on our panel last year, Karen, you talking about the flexibility and innovation that this moment has spurred, and letting you all experiment a little in this space has created some real creativity and opportunities for problem solving. So it sounds like that's continuing, and maybe a bright spot to continue forward. So I do think we're at time. There was one other comment in the chat about in-person, getting ready back for in-person external visitors. I know we're all eagerly awaiting clear guidance from the DOE on that, and I think that Pencil is keeping an ear to the ground on when that could happen for individual schools and for the system overall, and definitely happy to be chatting with any external partners about those opportunities to engage with any of our partner schools, these 4 or the dozens of others that Pencil works with. But with that, I think we can close out our 2021 Principal for a Day panel and kick off to our week of visits. Thank you to our 4 esteemed educators, our principals. You are all always just so generous and vulnerable with your time and comments and insights into your schools. It really is a pleasure to be able to learn from all of you. And to our guests and audience today, I hope you all got some insight into what our public schools have been grappling with and what is on the horizon. And we are here to facilitate any conversations to help move more work forward for the young people of New York. So thank you everybody for your time this afternoon, and Pencil will be in touch with everybody. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.